The hotel security footage showed my wife of 12 years walking into room 847 at 2:46 p.m. on a Tuesday. What made my hands shake wasn't just seeing her there, it was recognizing the man she was meeting, my business partner, my college roommate, the godfather to my youngest daughter. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Robert Chambers, and I'm a commercial real estate developer in Phoenix, Arizona. 41 years old, 2 daughters, Emma, 9, and Lily, 6. And until 3 months ago, I thought I had it all figured out. My wife, Jessica, was a pediatric nurse, beautiful, smart, the kind of woman who baked cookies for school fundraisers and never missed a parent-teacher conference. We had the house in Scottsdale with the pool, the golden retriever, the whole package. The first crack appeared on a Sunday morning in late March. I was in my home office reviewing contracts for a strip mall development in Tempe when Jessica's phone buzzed on my desk. She'd left it there while showering. The screen lit up with a text preview. Can't stop thinking about yesterday. When can we? The preview cut off. The sender was listed as Kelly from Yoga. Something felt wrong. Jessica had mentioned Kelly exactly twice in 4 years of attending yoga classes. I picked up the phone, my thumb hovering over the screen. The rational part of my brain said to put it down, that looking through your spouse's phone was a violation of privacy, a sign of distrust. The other part of my brain, the part that had built a $15 million business by trusting my instincts, said otherwise. I didn't know her passcode, but I knew Jessica. I tried our anniversary, ZO614, nothing. Emma's birthday, ZO318, nothing. Then, almost as an afterthought, I tried Lily's birthday, 11/27, the phone unlocked. My stomach dropped as I opened the messages from Kelly from Yoga. The thread went back 5 months. There were no yoga discussions. Instead, I found messages that made my vision blur. Details about hotel rooms, times they could meet while I was at work, explicit descriptions of what they'd done together and what they wanted to do next. But the worst part? The messages revealed Kelly was actually Kyle Patterson, my business partner of 8 years, the man I'd trusted with half my company, the guy who came to our house for barbecues and whose wife Angela had become Jessica's closest friend. I took screenshots, dozens of them. My hands were steady even though my heart was hammering. Years of negotiating deals had taught me to stay calm when everything inside wanted to explode. The shower was still running. I put the phone back exactly where Jessica had left it and returned to my office. I sat there staring at the contracts, the words swimming on the page, while my mind raced through the implications. 5 months. They'd been doing this for 5 months. I pulled up my calendar and started cross-referencing. All those evenings, Jessica had yoga class, Tuesdays and Thursdays at 6 p.m. All those Saturday mornings, she'd taken the girls to her mother's house in Chandler while I worked. The overnight shift she'd picked up last month at the hospital, even though she usually avoided night work. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. I thought about Kyle. We'd met at Arizona State, both of us in the business program, both ambitious and hungry. After graduation, we'd scraped together enough capital to flip our first commercial property, a rundown office building in Mesa. That success had led to another, then another. Patterson and Chambers Development had become one of the most respected firms in the Phoenix metro area. We were brothers. Or so I'd thought. I heard the shower turn off. 5 minutes later, Jessica walked into the office wearing yoga pants and a tank top. Her dark hair still damp, smelling like lavender shampoo. She smiled at me. That same warm smile I'd fallen in love with 13 years ago at a friend's party in Tempe. "Morning, honey. Want some coffee?" I looked up at her, studying her face for any sign of guilt, any indication that she was living a double life. Nothing. Just my wife, cheerful and affectionate, asking if I wanted coffee. "Sure," I said. "That'd be great." She kissed the top of my head and left. I listened to her footsteps on the hardwood floor, heard her humming in the kitchen. The normalcy of it all made me want to scream. But I didn't scream. I didn't confront her. I didn't grab Kyle's contact from my phone and call him right then. Instead, I opened my laptop and started researching divorce attorneys in Arizona. Because here's what I knew about myself. I was a planner. Every successful deal I'd ever closed came down to preparation, patience, and timing. You don't show your hand until you've stacked the deck in your favor. You don't make a move until you've war-gamed every possible response. Jessica and Kyle had been playing me for a fool for 5 months. They'd been careful, sneaky, calculating. Fine. 2 could play that game. Over the next week, I became a ghost in my own life. I smiled at breakfast. I kissed Jessica goodbye when I left for work. I texted her during the day, sent her funny memes, asked about her shift at the hospital. At night, I helped the girls with homework, read them bedtime stories, made love to my wife when she initiated it, all while my mind worked through scenarios, strategies, contingencies. I needed more information. Screenshots of text messages were damning, but I needed to understand the full scope of what I was dealing with. I was in the hallway outside our bedroom when I pulled up the mortgage app on my phone. Just checking rates, doing what I'd done every few months for the past year, monitoring our refinance options. The house in Scottsdale carried a 4.2% interest rate, and with rates dropping, I'd been watching for the right moment to pull the trigger on a refi. The app loaded slowly, spinning its little wheel while I leaned against the wall. Jessica was downstairs making dinner. I could hear her humming something, probably that song she'd had stuck in her head all week. The smell of garlic and onions drifted up the stairs. Normal. Everything looked so goddamn normal. The app finally loaded, and I scrolled past our primary mortgage to check the rate quotes I'd requested. But there was something else there. A new entry I didn't recognize. Pre-approval inquiry. Status. Pending review. My thumb hovered over the screen. I hadn't requested a pre-approval. We weren't looking at investment properties right now. The business had 3 deals in escrow already, and I'd told Kyle we needed to pump the brakes until those closed. I tapped the entry. The details populated slowly. Property type? Condominium. Location? Albuquerque, New Mexico. Applicant name? Jessica Marie Chambers. Just her name, not our names together. My heart started doing something strange in my chest. Not racing exactly, but beating harder, like each thump was trying to crack a rib. Albuquerque. We didn't know anyone in Albuquerque. We'd never even talked about Albuquerque. Why the hell would Jessica be getting pre-approved for a condo in New Mexico? I scrolled down, looking for more details. Date of credit inquiry, March 18th. That was 3 weeks ago. A Saturday. I pulled up my calendar, scrolling back. March 18th. The weekend Jessica had driven to Tucson to visit her mom. She'd left Friday afternoon, said her mother wasn't feeling well and needed help with some yard work. Came back Sunday evening smelling like her mother's house. That specific combination of potpourri and old carpet. Except apparently she'd been in Albuquerque getting pre-approved for a condo. I kept scrolling through the app details. There had to be more information. The pre-approval amount, $285,000. Income verification documents, uploaded. Employment status, verified. She'd gone through the whole process. This wasn't just browsing Zillow at 2 in the morning. This was real. Then I saw it, at the bottom of the screen. The footer section most people never looked at. Application reference number, processing lender, date submitted. And there, in small gray text, co-applicant SSN trace, XXXXX4729. Co-applicant. Someone else was on this application with her. My hands were shaking now. I took a screenshot, then another, making sure I captured everything. The SSN was partially masked, but those last 4 digits, 4729, they meant something. I knew I'd seen them before. I stood there in the hallway staring at those numbers. 4729. Where had I seen that? Downstairs, Jessica called up, Honey, dinner's almost ready. Can you grab the girls? Yeah, I called back. My voice sounded normal, steady. Give me 5 minutes. I walked into my home office and sat down at the desk, pulled up the file cabinet and found what I was looking for, the business partnership documents. Kyle and I had updated them last year when we brought on a new investor. I flipped through until I found his personal information page. Social Security number, XXXX4729. There it was. Kyle Patterson, my business partner of 8 years, my college roommate, the godfather to my youngest daughter, was listed as the co-applicant on Jessica's secret condo application in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I sat there for a long moment, just breathing. In through the nose, out through the mouth. The way I'd learned in those stress management seminars I'd taken when we were starting the business. When everything felt like it was spinning out of control, you focused on the breath. You focused on what you could control. I could control this. I pulled up my phone and started typing a text message to Jessica. Attached the screenshot from the mortgage app, the one showing her name, the Albuquerque condo, the date she was supposedly in Tucson with her mother. Then I opened my voice memo app and hit record. Hey, sweetheart, I said, keeping my voice light and conversational. Just wanted to let you know I found something interesting on our mortgage app. A pre-approval inquiry for a condo in Albuquerque. March 18th. That's the weekend you were visiting your mom, right? Funny thing about that. There's a co-applicant SSN trace in the footer. XXXXX4729. Would you like to know whose social security number that is? I paused, letting the silence stretch. It's Kyle's, your lover, your co-applicant, your future. Another pause. We need to talk when you get home. Actually, scratch that. We don't need to talk at all. I stopped the recording, attached it to the text message, and hit send. Then I sat back and waited. The message showed as delivered. Then read. I watched those little indicators like they were the most important thing in the world. 30 seconds passed. A minute. Then I heard it. The screech of tires in the driveway. She must have been pulling in right when she got the message. The car door slammed. Footsteps running up the front walk. I stayed in my office chair, completely calm. The front door burst open. Robert! Jessica's voice, high and panicked. Robert, where are you? Office, I called back. She appeared in the doorway, phone clutched in her hand, face pale. I can explain. No, I said. You really can't. I turned to my computer and pulled up the mortgage lender's website, started typing an email to their fraud department. Jessica stood there watching, her mouth opening and closing like she couldn't figure out what to say. What are you doing? She finally managed. I'm reporting fraudulent use of marital credit, I said, still typing. See, here's the thing about joint property in Arizona. We're a community property state, which means any credit inquiry using marital assets or credit history requires both spouses' consent. You didn't have my consent, neither did Kyle. Robert, please. I'm attaching our marriage certificate, I continued, clicking through files. Our joint tax returns. Documentation showing our current mortgage and shared financial obligations. All of which demonstrate that you can't just run off and get pre-approved for a secret love nest without your husband's knowledge. I hit send on the email, then immediately opened another browser window. Pulled up my divorce attorney's contact information, the one I'd already consulted twice, the one who'd been waiting for my call. What are you doing now? Jessica's voice was barely a whisper. Filing an emergency motion with the family court, I said, requesting an immediate freeze on all property transactions, real estate searches, and credit applications in your name pending divorce proceedings. Also requesting a restraining order preventing dissipation of marital assets. My phone buzzed. A text from Kyle. We need to talk. I deleted it without responding. You can't do this, Jessica said. You can't just— I already did. I stood up, gathering the printed documents I'd prepared earlier. Yes, I'd prepared them earlier. The moment I'd seen that mortgage app entry, I'd known exactly what I was going to do. The lender will receive my complaint within the hour. They'll halt your financing immediately. No bank wants to touch a loan that's being disputed as marital fraud. The court will have my emergency motion first thing tomorrow morning. And you know what the beautiful thing is? I looked at her directly for the first time since she'd burst into the room. You and Kyle just handed me documentation of your intent to relocate together, to establish a separate household, to commingle finances. Every divorce attorney in the state will tell you that's about the worst thing you could have done for your case. Jessica's legs seemed to give out. She sat down hard on the floor, back against the doorframe. The girls, she whispered. What about the girls? The girls will stay in their home, I said. This home. The one you were planning to abandon for a condo in Albuquerque with my business partner. I walked past her, stepped over her really, and headed downstairs. Emma and Lily were in the living room watching something on TV. They looked up when I came in. Hey, Dad, Emma said. Mom said dinner's ready. I know, sweetheart. Why don't you two go wash up? I'll get the table set. They scrambled off, leaving me alone in the living room. I could hear Jessica still upstairs, probably crying. Or maybe calling Kyle. It didn't matter. My phone buzzed again. An automated response from the mortgage lender acknowledging receipt of my fraud complaint and confirming that all applications associated with the referenced file would be placed on hold pending investigation. Perfect. The tires screeching into the driveway were just the overture. I stood at the kitchen window, phone in hand, watching Jessica's Honda Pilot lurch to a stop at an angle that blocked half the garage. The engine cut. For 30 seconds, nothing. Then the driver's door flew open and she stumbled out, phone pressed to her ear, her face visible even from this distance. Pale, stricken, the careful mask finally cracked. She was calling someone. Kyle, probably. Good. Let him sweat too. I walked to the front door and opened it before she could reach for her keys. She froze on the porch, phone lowering slowly to her side. Up close, I could see the mascara smudged beneath her eyes. She'd been crying during the drive. Robert, I can explain. Can you? I kept my voice level, conversational. Because I'd love to hear the explanation for applying for a mortgage with another man while we're still married. I'm genuinely curious about the mental gymnastics required. It wasn't like that. We were just looking. We hadn't decided anything. Just looking. I nodded slowly. With a pre-approval application. With his social security number. On March 18th, when your mother was supposedly dying in Tucson. She flinched. I never said she was dying. You said she was sick. You said you needed to be there. You cried, Jessica. I held you while you cried about how worried you were. The memory tasted like battery acid. I offered to come with you. Do you remember what you said? Robert, you said, no, honey, you have that meeting with the Tempe investors. I'll be fine. You kissed me. You told me you loved me. I stepped back from the doorway. Come inside. We're not doing this where the neighbors can see. She hesitated, then walked past me into the house. I caught the scent of her perfume, the same one she'd worn to our wedding. My stomach turned. In the kitchen, she set her purse on the counter with shaking hands. How did you find out? The mortgage app sends notifications to both account holders. Did you forget we set up joint access last year when we refinanced? I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. The inquiry showed up this morning. I called the lender. Very helpful woman named Patricia. She was confused about why my wife was applying for a second property with a different co-borrower. So was I. Jessica's face went through several expressions. Shock, calculation, desperation. She settled on pleading. It was a mistake. A stupid, stupid mistake. Kyle and I, we got caught up in something, but it's over now. It's been over. Over. The credit inquiry was 3 weeks ago. I mean, we ended it. After that trip. We realized how insane it was, what we were doing to you, to Angela, to the kids. Don't! The word came out harder than I intended. Don't you dare bring Emma and Lily into this as if you gave a single thought to them when you were apartment shopping with your lover. He's not… We never… She stopped, seeming to realize that denial was pointless. What did you tell the lender? The truth. That you submitted a fraudulent application using marital credit without my knowledge or consent. That I'm disputing the inquiry and any associated applications as unauthorized. I pulled my phone from my pocket and opened the email from my attorney. I also sent them a copy of our marriage certificate and a letter from my lawyer explaining that any property purchases by you require my consent as your legal spouse. Patricia was very apologetic. She assured me the application would be denied. Jessica grabbed the counter edge. You can't do that. I already did. This morning. Right after I filed for divorce. The color drained from her face. You didn't. Emergency motion. I'm requesting a freeze on all marital assets, prevention of property dissipation, and a temporary restraining order prohibiting you from making any major financial decisions without court approval. I set the phone down. My attorney filed it electronically at 9 this morning. You'll be served within 48 hours. Robert, please, can we just talk about this? We've been married 12 years. We have 2 beautiful daughters. You can't just throw that away because of one mistake. One mistake? I laughed, a sound with no humor in it. You've been sleeping with my business partner for 5 months. You've been planning a future with him. You lied about your mother being sick so you could go apartment hunting in another city. Those aren't mistakes, Jessica. Those are choices. Calculated, deliberate choices. She started crying then. Real tears this time. Not the careful ones she'd used when lying about her mother. I never meant to hurt you. It just happened. Kyle and I, we connected and it felt so… Stop. I held up a hand. I don't want to hear about your connection. I don't want to hear about your feelings. I want you to understand what's going to happen next. She wiped her eyes, smearing mascara further. What do you mean? The mortgage application you submitted? It's not just going to be denied. It's going to be flagged as fraudulent. That's going to impact your credit score significantly. I picked up a folder from the counter. I'd prepared this conversation like a closing argument. The emergency motion I filed includes documentation of your attempt to acquire property using marital assets without my consent. That's going to weigh heavily in the property division. You're trying to take everything from me. Her voice rose, panic edging in. The house, the money… I'm trying to protect what I built, what we built, before you decided to burn it down. I opened the folder, showing her the first page. This house? I bought it before we got married. It's in my name. The mortgage is in my name. You have no legal claim to it. That's not true. Community property. Arizona is an equitable distribution state, not pure community property. And even if it were, I have documentation showing this house was my separate property prior to marriage. You'll get your share of the equity accumulated during the marriage, but you're not getting the house. I flipped to the next page. The business? That's a partnership with Kyle, and I'm currently in the process of dissolving that partnership based on breach of fiduciary duty and moral turpitude. My attorney is very optimistic about my chances of buying him out at a discount. This is insane. You're being vindictive. I'm being strategic. There's a difference. I closed the folder. You wanted a fresh start with Kyle? Fine. But you're not funding it with my assets. You're not using the credit I helped you build. And you're certainly not walking away from this marriage with half of everything I worked for while you were planning your exit. She stared at me, and I could see the moment she realized I wasn't going to be talked down, wasn't going to be manipulated with tears or apologies or promises to change. What about the girls? What about them? Custody, You're going to use this against me, aren't you? You're going to try to take them away. I'm going to ask for primary physical custody, yes. Joint legal custody, but they live with me. I kept my voice steady. You're welcome to visitation. I'm not a monster, Jessica. I'm not going to keep your daughters from you. How generous. The sarcasm was bitter, defensive. It is, actually. Considering you were planning to move to Albuquerque with your boyfriend and upend their entire lives without discussing it with me first. I let that sink in. How exactly were you going to explain that to Emma and Lily? Sorry, girls, we're moving to a new city with Uncle Kyle because Mommy fell in love with Daddy's best friend? She had no answer for that. I didn't think so. I picked up my phone and keys. I'm going to pick up the girls from your mother's house, the real one, in Mesa. I'll tell them you're not feeling well and you'll see them tomorrow. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem anymore. You have friends. You have Kyle. Figure it out. I headed for the door, then stopped. Oh, and Jessica? Change your passwords. I'm done monitoring your mistakes. I left her standing in the kitchen of the house that was no longer hers, in the life she'd destroyed, and drove toward Mesa with the windows down and my hands steady on the wheel. The rage would come later. Right now, I had my daughters to think about, and a future to rebuild from the wreckage of my wife's betrayal. I pulled into the elementary school parking lot at exactly 3:15 p.m., 15 minutes before dismissal. The steering wheel felt solid under my hands. Real, tangible, unlike the past 24 hours that seemed to exist in some alternate dimension where your wife of 12 years turned out to be a stranger. Emma's classroom was on the second floor, Lily's on the first. I'd need to coordinate the pickup carefully. Get Lily first, then head upstairs before the hallway traffic became impossible. My phone buzzed. Jessica again. The 7th call in the past hour. I declined it. The thing about having daughters is that you can't fall apart. Not when they need to be picked up from school, fed dinner, helped with homework, tucked into bed. The world doesn't pause for your personal apocalypse. It keeps turning, indifferent to the fact that your entire life just detonated. I'd told Jessica to be gone by the time we got home. I meant it. Parents started trickling into the parking lot. SUVs and sedans, the usual afternoon parade. I recognized most of them. Karen Fitzgerald with her twins. David Nguyen, who always arrived exactly at 3:25. The Johnsons in their Tesla. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that the guy in the silver Audi was currently watching his marriage burn to the ground in real time. My phone buzzed again. Not Jessica this time. Unknown. Number, we need to talk. This is insane. Call me. Kyle. He'd gotten a new number. Smart move, considering I'd blocked his personal and work lines. I deleted the message without responding. At 3:28, I headed inside. The hallways smelled like industrial cleaner and poster paint, familiar and oddly comforting. Lily's classroom was decorated with construction paper butterflies, her teacher, Mrs. Wilson, standing by the door with her usual cheerful expression. Mr. Chambers, we don't usually see you at pickup. Schedule worked out today, I said, keeping my voice light. Thought I'd surprise the girls. Lily spotted me and her face lit up. Daddy! She crashed into my legs with the full force of a 6-year-old's enthusiasm, backpack bouncing. Whatever else was happening, whatever nightmare I was navigating, this was real. This mattered. Hey, sweetheart. Good day? We learned about butterflies. Did you know they taste with their feet? I did not know that. That's pretty cool. I signed her out on Mrs. Wilson's clipboard. Then we headed upstairs to Emma's classroom. The 4th grade hallway was louder, kids streaming out with that end-of-day energy. Emma was talking with 2 friends near the lockers, her expression animated. When she saw me, confusion flickered across her face. Dad? Where's Mom? She had something come up. I'm on pickup duty today. Emma studied me for a moment. Too perceptive, too smart. At 9, she was starting to notice things, read between lines. I'd need to be careful. Okay, she said slowly. Can Madison come over? Not today, honey. Maybe this weekend. We walked to the car, Lily chattering about butterflies while Emma stayed quiet. I could feel her watching me, trying to puzzle something out. The drive home took 12 minutes. 12 minutes of maintaining normalcy, of answering questions about homework and what we'd have for dinner, while my mind calculated logistics. Jessica's car would need to be gone. Her things would need to be packed. The girls couldn't see her like this, panicked, desperate, caught. They needed stability, routine, the illusion that everything was fine until I could figure out how to tell them the truth. We turned onto our street at 3:47 p.m. Jessica's BMW was still in the driveway. I felt my jaw tighten. I'd given her clear instructions. 4 hours to pack essentials and leave. It wasn't complicated. Mom's home, Lily said happily. I pulled in next to the BMW, mind racing. This wasn't the plan. The girls weren't supposed to see her yet, not until I'd figured out the right way to handle this conversation, not while everything was still raw and explosive. Girls, wait in the car for a second. I need to check something. But, just a second, Emma, I promise. I got out, locked them in with the child safety feature, and headed for the front door. Through the sidelight window, I could see movement in the kitchen. Jessica pacing, phone pressed to her ear. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. She spun toward me, ending her call mid-sentence. Her eyes were red, mascara smudged. She'd been crying for hours by the look of it. Robert, please. We need to talk about this. You can't just… The girls are in the car, I said quietly. You were supposed to be gone. This is my home, too. You can't just kick me out. Actually, I can. The house is my separate property. My attorney was very clear on that point. Her face crumpled. I made a mistake. I know I did. But we can fix this. We can go to counseling. We can… Where would you like to stay? I kept my voice level, clinical. Your sisters? A hotel? I need an address for the custody arrangement. Custody arrangement? Her voice went shrill. You're not taking my daughters away from me. I'm not taking them away. I'm establishing primary physical custody with a reasonable visitation schedule. You'll see them regularly, just not here. Robert, please. She stepped toward me, reaching out. I love you. I love our family. This thing with Kyle, it was stupid. It was a mistake. But it doesn't have to destroy everything. The front door opened behind me. Emma stood in the doorway, Lily hovering behind her. I unlocked it, Emma said, defiant. We were waiting forever. Perfect. Just perfect. Jessica immediately shifted gears, wiping her eyes and forcing a smile. Hi, babies. How was school? Why are you crying? Emma asked, too direct to be deflected. Just a hard day, sweetie. Nothing for you to worry about. I could see Emma's skepticism, the way she looked between us, 9 years old and already reading the room like an expert. Girls, why don't you go upstairs and start your homework? I said. Mom and I need to finish discussing something. Are you fighting? Lily asked, her voice small. No, honey, just talking. Go ahead upstairs. They went reluctantly, Emma throwing one more suspicious glance over her shoulder. I waited until I heard their bedroom door close. You need to leave, I said. Now, before this gets worse. Worse? Jessica laughed, brittle and sharp. How could it possibly get worse? You've already destroyed everything. The mortgage application, the divorce filing, freezing me out of… You destroyed it, I interrupted. When you spent 5 months planning a future with my business partner. When you lied about your mother being sick so you could fly to Albuquerque and apply for a condo. When you decided our 12 years together meant less than whatever fantasy you'd built with Kyle. She flinched like I'd struck her. I want you out by dinner time, I continued. Pack what you need. I'll arrange for you to get the rest later. My attorney will contact you tomorrow about the temporary custody schedule. I'm not leaving my daughters. You already did. Every time you met him. Every lie you told. You chose this. My phone buzzed. A text from Kyle's new number. She's not answering. What did you do? I showed Jessica the screen. Your boyfriend's worried about you. Something shifted in her expression. Calculation replacing desperation. If you think I'm just going to roll over and let you take everything, you're wrong. I have rights. I've been a good mother, a good wife. You applied for a mortgage with another man while married to me, using marital credit. That's fraud, Jessica. The lender's already flagged it. You want to talk about rights? Talk to a lawyer. Get your own, because mine is very thorough. The doorbell rang. We both froze. Through the sidelight, I could see Kyle Patterson standing on my front porch. He'd actually shown up at my house. Jessica's eyes went wide. Oh, God. Robert, don't. I opened the door. Kyle looked terrible. Unshaven, rumpled shirt, the polish of his usual appearance completely gone. Robert. Man, we need to talk about this like adults. This whole thing is… I punched him in the face. Not hard enough to break anything. I'm not stupid, but solid enough to send him stumbling backward off the porch. He landed on the walkway, hand flying to his nose. That's assault, he shouted. I could press charges. Do it, I said calmly. Give me one more reason to document your presence at my home while you're sleeping with my wife. I'm sure that'll play great in divorce court. Blood trickled between his fingers. Not a lot. Barely anything, really. Get off my property, I said. If you come back, I'll call the police. I closed the door, locked it, and turned back to Jessica. She stood frozen in the hallway, face pale. Pack your things, I said. You have 1 hour. The driveway was empty when I woke up the next morning. I'd half expected to find Jessica's car still there, her stubbornness winning out over my ultimatum. But the gray Honda was gone, leaving only an oil stain on the concrete where it usually sat. I checked the garage from the kitchen window. Kyle's truck had vanished too. Good. I made coffee in the quiet house, the machine's gurgle the only sound. It was 6:30 on a Tuesday. The girls were still asleep. I had maybe an hour before they'd come downstairs asking for breakfast, asking where Mom was. I'd figure that out when the time came. My phone buzzed. Not Jessica. I'd already blocked her number after she'd sent 17 increasingly frantic texts last night. This was from Dennis Kowalski, my divorce attorney. Emergency motion hearing set for Thursday 2 p.m. Judge Palmer. Bring all documentation. She's retained counsel, Laura Vega. Laura Vega. I knew that name. She'd represented a colleague's wife 2 years ago, taken him for everything he had. Jessica wasn't messing around. Neither was I. I spent the next hour organizing files on my laptop, bank statements, credit card records, the mortgage application screenshots, text message logs. Dennis had been clear. Documentation was everything. The court didn't care about emotions or betrayal. It cared about facts, assets, and what was best for the children. I had facts. I had plenty of facts. At 7:15, Emma appeared in the kitchen doorway, her blonde hair tangled from sleep. Where's Mom? I'd rehearsed this. Keep it simple, don't lie but don't traumatize. She had to go stay somewhere else for a little while, I said. Grown-up stuff. Nothing for you to worry about. Emma's face crumpled. She was 9, old enough to know that grown-up stuff usually meant something bad. Did you guys have a fight? Something like that. I poured milk over her cereal. But you and Lily are fine. I'm here. Everything's going to be okay. She didn't look convinced, but she ate her breakfast without more questions. Lily came down 10 minutes later, oblivious and chattering about a project due at school. I got them ready, packed their lunches, drove them to Sandia Academy like it was any other Tuesday. The normalcy felt like a lie. My phone rang as I pulled out of the school parking lot. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Mr. Chambers? This is Bethany Ortiz from First Western Mortgage. My grip tightened on the steering wheel. Yes? I'm calling regarding the fraud report you filed on application number 4782NM. We've completed our preliminary investigation, and I wanted to inform you that the application has been formally denied and flagged in our system. Good. Additionally, we're required to report suspected mortgage fraud to the New Mexico Financial Institutions Division. Your wife and the co-applicant may face civil penalties. I wanted to make sure you understood the implications before we proceed. Civil penalties. That meant fines, possibly worse. Part of me, the part that had loved Jessica for 12 years, wanted to tell Bethany to drop it. But that part was buried under layers of rage and betrayal. Proceed, I said. Understood. You'll receive written confirmation within 5 business days. If you have any questions, I don't. I hung up and sat in the parking lot for a long moment, watching other parents drop off their kids. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that their worlds could implode in a single text message. My phone buzzed again. This time it was an email from Kyle's business account. His actual business account, the one tied to our company. We need to talk about the dissolution. I've retained counsel. We can do this clean, or we can make it ugly. Your choice. I laughed. Actually laughed, sitting alone in my truck in the Sandia Academy parking lot. Kyle thought he had leverage. Kyle thought this was a negotiation. I forwarded the email to Dennis with a single line. Add this to the file. Then I opened a new message to my accountant, Trevor Walsh. Trevor had been handling the company books for 6 years. He was meticulous, honest, and had no particular loyalty to Kyle. Trevor, need a full audit of company finances going back 24 months. Every transaction, every expense, every distribution, especially anything Kyle signed off on. Dissolution in progress. Can you have preliminary findings by end of week? His response came within minutes. Already started when I heard. You'll have it Thursday morning. I'd called Trevor yesterday, right after I'd called Dennis. Told him the partnership was ending, that I needed to know exactly where we stood financially. Trevor was a professional. He hadn't asked why, just said he'd get to work. Now I sat in my truck and thought about the business Kyle and I had built. 8 years of 12-hour days, of bidding on properties and negotiating deals, of celebrating wins and weathering losses. We'd started with nothing but ambition and a small business loan. Now we had a portfolio worth 7 figures. And Kyle had thrown it away for an affair with my wife. I wondered if he'd been skimming. The thought had occurred to me last night, lying awake in bed. If Kyle was willing to betray me personally, would he hesitate to betray me professionally? It seemed almost quaint to worry about embezzlement when he'd been sleeping with Jessica. But money was money. If he'd been stealing, I wanted to know. My phone rang. Jessica's mother. I stared at the screen. Patricia had always been kind to me, had welcomed me into her family when Jessica and I got married. She lived in Tucson, 3 hours south. Jessica had supposedly been visiting her that weekend. She'd actually been in Albuquerque with Kyle. I answered. Patricia. Robert. Her voice was tight. Jessica called me this morning. She's very upset. She says you've kicked her out of the house, that you won't let her see the girls. That's not accurate, I said carefully. I told her she needed to leave last night. She left. The girls are at school. She's welcome to call them, but she's not staying in our house. She said, Patricia paused. She said you found out about a mistake she made, that you're blowing things out of proportion. A mistake. That's what Jessica was calling it. A mistake. Like she'd accidentally backed into a mailbox or forgotten to pick up milk at the store. Did she tell you what the mistake was? I asked. Silence. Patricia, your daughter has been having an affair with my business partner for 5 months. She applied for a condo in Albuquerque with him, in her name and his, not mine. She lied to you about visiting you that weekend so she could go apartment hunting with him. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. I heard Patricia's sharp intake of breath. She told me she was visiting me? February 14th weekend, Valentine's Day. Ring a bell? Her voice cracked. I was in Phoenix that weekend, at my sister's. Jessica knew that. Of course she did. Jessica had probably counted on her mother not mentioning it, on me not checking, on the whole house of cards staying upright just a little longer. I'm sorry you're finding out this way, I said, and I meant it. Patricia didn't deserve this. But I need to go. I have meetings. Robert, wait. The girls are fine. They're at school. They're safe. They're my priority. I hung up before she could say more. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of phone calls and emails. I met with Dennis at 11 to go over the emergency motion. He'd filed for temporary custody, temporary exclusive use of the marital residence, and a freeze on all marital assets. The hearing on Thursday would determine whether those requests were granted until the full divorce proceedings played out. Judge Palmer is fair, Dennis said, spreading documents across his desk. She won't care about the affair. New Mexico is no fault. But the mortgage fraud? That matters. It shows intent to hide assets, intent to establish separate residency. Combined with your documentation of her deception, we've got a strong case for temporary custody. What about the business? I asked. That's trickier. Partnership dissolution is separate from the divorce, but the business is a marital asset. We'll need valuations, buyout negotiations. Could take months. Kyle's going to fight. Let him. Dennis leaned back in his chair. You've got clean books, right? No questionable transactions on your end. Clean as they come. Then let him fight. Discovery works both ways. If he's been playing games with company money, we'll find it. I left Dennis's office at noon and drove to the property on Paseo del Norte we'd been developing. 15 luxury townhomes, half sold, construction 60% complete. Kyle and I were supposed to meet with the contractor today to review the timeline. Kyle wasn't there. The contractor, Miguel Ruiz, looked uncomfortable when I arrived alone. Is Kyle coming? No, I said. It's just me from now on. Kyle's no longer involved with the project. Miguel's eyebrows rose, but he didn't ask questions. We walked the site, reviewed the punch list, discussed the remaining work. It was mechanical, professional. I'd done this 100 times. But everything felt different now. Every decision I made, every dollar I authorized, it was all mine now. No partner to consult, no one to share the risk or the reward. I should have felt liberated. Instead, I just felt tired. The audit results landed on my desk 3 days later. I was in my home office, Emma and Lily watching cartoons in the living room, when the encrypted email arrived from the forensic accountant. I'd hired Whitmore and Associates specifically because they'd exposed a major embezzlement scheme at a construction firm 2 years back. If Kyle had been stealing from our company, they'd find it. I opened the PDF attachment, scanning the executive summary first. My stomach dropped. Over the past 18 months, Kyle had systematically siphoned $247,000 from our operating accounts. Small withdrawals, carefully timed, $3,000 here, $5,000 there, always just under the threshold that would trigger automatic review. He'd created fake vendor invoices for consulting services and materials procurement, routing payments to shell LLCs he'd registered in New Mexico. New Mexico, where he and Jessica had applied for their Love Nest condo. I sat back in my chair, letting the pieces fall into place. This wasn't just an affair. This was a planned exit strategy. Kyle had been funding their new life together with money stolen from our business, from me. The condo application wasn't some impulsive romantic gesture. It was the endgame of a months-long scheme to drain our partnership and disappear with my wife. The forensic report included copies of the shell company registrations. 2 LLCs, Sandia Consulting Group and Rio Grande Materials, both registered to a P.O. box in Albuquerque, both listing Kyle as the sole member. The bank accounts showed regular deposits matching the fraudulent invoices, then withdrawals that corresponded with, I scrolled down, payments to furniture stores, appliance retailers, and a luxury car dealership. They'd been furnishing their new life with my money. I forwarded the entire report to my attorney, then copied it to my personal cloud storage. Evidence. Always more evidence. My phone buzzed. A text from my attorney, David Walsh. Call me when you can. Got some news on the mortgage fraud report? I stepped out onto the back patio, closing the sliding door behind me. The March afternoon was warm, the pool filter humming quietly. I could hear Emma and Lily laughing at something on TV. David answered on the first ring. The lender's legal department contacted me, he said without preamble. They're treating the condo application as potential mortgage fraud. Since you provided documentation of your marriage and joint assets, they've flagged both Jessica and Kyle's credit files. The pre-approval's been rescinded, and they're referring the case to their fraud investigation unit. What does that mean for them? Best case? Damaged credit and no mortgage approval for the foreseeable future. Worst case? If the lender decides to pursue criminal charges, they could both face fraud prosecution. It's a federal offense to misrepresent marital status on a mortgage application when it affects community property. I watched a hummingbird dart between the desert plants Jessica had insisted on installing last summer. She'd spent hours researching native species, talking about creating a sustainable landscape. The whole time, she'd been planning to abandon it. There's more, David continued. I filed the emergency motion to freeze all property searches and purchases in either of your names. The judge granted it this morning. Jessica can't buy, sell, or encumber any real property until the divorce is finalized. Neither can you, technically, but that protects your interests. And the business audit? You found something. Kyle embezzled nearly $250,000 over 18 months. I'm sending you the forensic report now. David was quiet for a moment. That changes everything. We can use this in the divorce proceedings. Shows a pattern of deception and financial malfeasance that directly impacted marital assets. And you'll want to file a police report. This is criminal. I know. Robert, this is serious. With this level of theft, the DA will likely prosecute. Kyle could be looking at felony charges. Good. I ended the call and stood there, staring at the pool. The water was perfectly clear, the surface undisturbed. Everything looked normal, peaceful, like our life had looked from the outside while it rotted from within. My phone buzzed again. Jessica, can I please come get some more of my clothes? I need things for work. I typed back, Saturday morning, 10 a.m. I'll have the girls at my parents'. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Thank you. I didn't respond. Saturday morning, I dropped Emma and Lily at my parents' house in Tempe. My mother had started asking questions. Why wasn't Jessica around? Why did the girls seem confused about where Mommy was staying? But I'd kept my answers vague. We're working through some things. I'll explain soon. My father had pulled me aside in the driveway. Son, whatever's happening, you've got those girls to think about. I know, Dad. I am thinking about them. That's why I'm handling this the way I am. He'd studied my face for a long moment, then nodded. You need anything, you call. I drove back to the house, arriving at 9:45. Jessica's car was already in the driveway. She was sitting on the front steps, a coffee cup from the Starbucks down the street in her hands. She looked tired, shadows under her eyes, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She was wearing scrubs, probably heading to a shift after this. You're early, I said, unlocking the front door. I didn't want to waste your time. I held the door open. She walked past me, and I caught the scent of her shampoo. Lavender. The same brand she'd been using for years. I'll be in the office, I said. Take what you need from the bedroom. She paused at the base of the stairs. Robert. Don't, she flinched. I want you to know I never meant for any of this to hurt you. I felt something cold settle in my chest. You applied for a condo with him, using money he stole from our business. You told me you were visiting your mother while you were planning a whole new life. But you never meant to hurt me? Her face went pale. What are you talking about? Kyle didn't steal $247,000 over 18 months. The forensic audit found everything. Shell companies, fake invoices, the works. He's been funding your little escape plan with my money. She set the coffee cup down on the entryway table, her hand shaking. I didn't know. Robert, I swear I didn't know about any money. You knew enough. You knew you were applying for a mortgage while married to me. You knew you were lying to lenders about your marital status. That's fraud, Jessica. Federal fraud. We were going to wait until after the divorce. There was no divorce filing. You were still wearing your wedding ring, still sleeping in our bed, still playing happy family while you planned your exit. She wrapped her arms around herself. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? Explain it to me. Make me understand how any of this was anything other than calculated betrayal. She looked up at me, tears starting to form. I fell in love with him. I didn't plan it. It just happened, and I didn't know how to tell you. And then everything got so complicated. You fell in love with my business partner, my college roommate, our daughter's godfather. And instead of being honest, instead of asking for a divorce like an adult, you snuck around for 5 months, applied for a condo together, and helped him steal from our company. That's not complicated, Jessica. That's just selfish. She was crying now, mascara starting to run. Please, I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. But I never wanted it to be like this. How did you want it to be? You were going to tell me eventually? When? After you'd moved into your new place? After you'd drained more money from the business? Or were you just going to disappear one day and leave me to figure it out? I don't know. I don't know what I was thinking. I was confused and scared and you made choices. You chose him. You chose to lie. You chose to commit fraud. Those are your choices, Jessica. Own them. She wiped at her eyes. What happens now? Now you get your clothes and leave. The mortgage fraud is being investigated by the lender's legal department. The embezzlement is going to the police. The divorce is proceeding. And you need to find yourself a good attorney because you're going to need one. She stared at me. You reported the mortgage application? I reported fraud, which is what it was. But that will affect my credit. My ability to what? Buy a condo with your lover using stolen money? Yes. That's the point. Her expression shifted, something hardening behind the tears. You're trying to destroy me. No. I'm protecting myself and my daughters from someone who's proven she can't be trusted. There's a difference. She grabbed her coffee cup, her hands still trembling. I'll get my things. I watched her climb the stairs, then went into my office and closed the door. I could hear her moving around upstairs, drawers opening and closing, the closet door sliding on its track. 20 minutes later, she came back down with 2 suitcases and a garment bag. I opened the front door for her. She paused in the doorway. The girls are going to hate me, she said quietly. The girls are going to know the truth. What they do with that is up to them. She walked to her car, loaded her bags, and drove away without looking back. I closed the door and leaned against it, suddenly exhausted. My phone buzzed. A text from David Walsh. Police want to meet Monday to discuss the embezzlement case. Can you make 2 p.m. at the station? I typed back, I'll be there. The house was silent around me. In a few hours, I'd pick up Emma and Lily, and we'd have dinner, and I'd help them with homework, and we'd pretend everything was normal. But first, I had some calls to make. Kyle's wife, Angela, still didn't know about the affair. That needed to change. I found her number in my contacts and pressed call. The detective's office smelled like burnt coffee and old paperwork. I sat across from Detective Maria Santos, a woman in her mid-40s with tired eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, while she reviewed the forensic audit for the third time. "This is solid," she said finally. "Very solid. Shell companies, falsified invoices, systematic withdrawal patterns. Your accountant did good work. So you'll pursue charges?" "The DA will make that call, but yeah, I'd say Kyle Patterson's looking at felony embezzlement. With this amount and this level of premeditation, he's facing real prison time if convicted." I nodded. The satisfaction I'd expected to feel didn't come. Just a dull sense of finality. Detective Santos closed the folder. "For what it's worth, Mr. Chambers, I'm sorry. Finding out your partner's stealing from you is bad enough without the rest of it." The rest of it was her polite way of acknowledging that Kyle had also been sleeping with my wife. Small-town courtesy in a city of 1 million people. "What happens next?" I asked. "We'll bring him in for questioning, probably tomorrow. He'll lawyer up, which is his right. The DA will review the evidence and decide whether to file charges. Given the amount and documentation, I'd say charges are likely. After that, it's out of my hands." I stood, shaking her hand. "Thank you, Detective. Just doing my job." The divorce hearing 3 weeks later was anticlimactic. Judge Palmer, a silver-haired woman with reading glasses on a chain, reviewed the evidence with the kind of detached professionalism that comes from seeing too many marriages implode. Jessica sat at the opposite table with Laura Vega, her attorney. She looked thinner, worn down. We hadn't spoken since that Saturday she'd picked up her clothes. All communication went through lawyers now. Judge Palmer addressed both attorneys. "I've reviewed the emergency motion, the financial disclosures, and the custody evaluation. Ms. Vega, does your client wish to contest any of the findings?" Laura Vega glanced at Jessica, who shook her head slightly. "No, Your Honor. We're prepared to accept the temporary custody arrangement and asset freeze as proposed." The judge made a note. "Very well. Temporary primary physical custody is granted to Mr. Chambers. Mrs. Chambers will have supervised visitation every other weekend, pending completion of the full custody evaluation. All marital assets remain frozen until final divorce decree. The mortgage fraud investigation is noted in the record, but is not within this court's jurisdiction." She looked up at both of us over her glasses. "I strongly encourage both parties to consider mediation for the final settlement. This level of acrimony serves no one, least of all your children." Jessica's attorney nodded. Mine said, "We'll take that under advisement, Your Honor." The gavel came down. Just like that, my marriage was legally suspended, pending its final death. Kyle was arrested 2 days later. I heard about it from Miguel, the contractor, who'd heard it from someone at the county clerk's office. Felony embezzlement, 3 counts. Bond set at $100,000. He posted it within hours, probably borrowed from his parents, since his accounts were frozen pending the criminal investigation. Angela had filed for divorce the same week I had. I'd called her that Saturday after Jessica left, told her everything. She'd been silent for a long time, then said, "I knew something was wrong. I just didn't want to believe it." We'd compared notes, shared evidence. Turned out Kyle had been lying to her too. Late nights at the office that were actually hotel rooms, business trips that never appeared on the company calendar. Angela was a middle school teacher, sharp and thorough. Between the two of us, we'd built an airtight case. The partnership dissolution moved forward with brutal efficiency. The forensic audit had revealed enough malfeasance that my attorney was able to argue for a buyout at 30 cents on the dollar. Kyle's attorney fought it, but the evidence was overwhelming. He'd stolen from the company. He'd violated fiduciary duty. He'd compromised every project we'd worked on together. In the end, Kyle signed the dissolution agreement. He didn't have a choice. The alternative was a protracted legal battle he couldn't afford and couldn't win. I wrote him a check for $180,000, his share of the business after accounting for the embezzlement and legal fees. He cashed it without a word. We never spoke again. 6 months after that Tuesday afternoon when I'd unlocked Jessica's phone, I sat in my backyard watching Emma and Lily play in the pool. It was September, still warm enough for swimming, the desert sunset painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Emma had started therapy. She'd been having nightmares, acting out at school. The therapist said it was normal for children of divorce, especially when they didn't fully understand why their family had fractured. I'd told them an age-appropriate version of the truth. Mom had made some choices that hurt our family, and we couldn't live together anymore. They'd see her regularly, but our house was their primary home now. Lily seemed to adapt more easily. She was younger, more resilient, or maybe just better at hiding the damage. Jessica's supervised visitation had been upgraded to unsupervised after 3 months of compliance. She'd rented a small apartment in Rio Rancho, gone back to full-time nursing, started her own therapy. We exchanged brief civil texts about pickup times and school events. Nothing more. The mortgage fraud investigation had concluded with a settlement. Jessica and Kyle both paid fines and took hits to their credit scores, but no criminal charges were filed. The lender had decided prosecution wasn't worth the cost. Kyle's embezzlement case was still pending. His attorney was negotiating a plea deal, probably restitution and probation in exchange for avoiding prison time. I'd get my money back eventually, plus interest. It wouldn't undo the betrayal, but it would close that particular wound. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. "How are my girls?" I snapped a photo of Emma and Lily in the pool, sent it back with a caption, "Happy." And they were, mostly. Kids are adaptable. They'd adjusted to the new normal. Weekdays with dad, weekends with mom, 2 houses instead of 1. They'd stopped asking when we were getting back together. They'd started calling my house home, without qualification. I'd sold the Scottsdale house 3 months ago. Too many memories, too much space. We'd moved to a smaller place in the foothills, 4 bedrooms instead of 5, a view of the Sandias instead of a golf course. The girls had decorated their new rooms, picked out paint colors, made it theirs. Starting over. I thought about that phrase a lot. Starting over. Like you could just reset everything, wipe the slate clean, pretend the past 12 years hadn't happened. But you couldn't. Emma and Lily existed. The business I'd built existed. The man I'd become through all of it, the good and the bad, existed. You didn't start over, you just started. "Dad," Lily called from the pool. "Watch this." She did a handstand underwater, her legs wobbling above the surface. I applauded when she came up for air. "That was great, sweetheart." Emma rolled her eyes with the supreme disdain only a 9-year-old could muster. "That's not even hard. Watch this." She dove deep, touched the bottom, came up in a perfect arc. Show off. She got that from me. My phone buzzed again. An email from Trevor, my accountant. "Q3 numbers are strong. You're on track for best year yet. Nice work." The business had survived. More than survived, it had thrived. Without Kyle's skimming, without the distraction of partnership disputes, I'd been able to focus. I'd closed 2 major deals in the past 4 months, hired a project manager to handle day-to-day operations, started looking at expansion into Santa Fe. Turned out I didn't need a partner after all. The final divorce decree came through in November, 8 months after I'd found those text messages. Jessica and I sat in a conference room with our attorneys and signed the papers that officially ended our marriage. Joint legal custody, primary physical with me, a visitation schedule, division of assets. All very civilized, very adult, very much over. "I'm sorry," Jessica said as we walked out of the building. The first real words she'd spoken to me in months. I stopped, looking at her. She'd cut her hair shorter, lost weight. She looked like a different person from the woman who'd baked cookies for school fundraisers. "For what part?" I asked. "All of it. The lying, the betrayal, what I put the girls through." She wrapped her arms around herself against the November wind. "I was selfish and stupid, and I destroyed something good." I could have said a lot of things. I could have told her she was right, that she'd destroyed our family for a fantasy that had evaporated the moment reality hit. I could have told her about the nights I'd lain awake wondering what I'd done wrong, what I'd missed, how I could have prevented this. I could have told her I'd loved her with everything I had, and it hadn't been enough. Instead, I said, "The girls need you to be stable. Be that for them." She nodded, tears in her eyes. "I'm trying." "Try harder." I walked to my truck and drove away. A year after everything fell apart, I stood in Emma's school gymnasium watching her receive an award for academic excellence. She walked across the stage in a dress she'd picked out herself, shook the principal's hand, smiled for the camera. Confident, resilient. Okay. Jessica sat 3 rows behind me. We'd coordinated who would arrive when, where we'd sit, how we'd handle the post-ceremony photos. Co-parenting through careful logistics. Lily sat next to me, swinging her legs and eating contraband candy she'd smuggled in her backpack. "Emma's smart," she whispered. "She is," I agreed. After the ceremony, we gathered for photos. Me and the girls together, then Jessica and the girls, then one awkward shot with all 4 of us that Emma insisted on. "For my scrapbook," she said. I looked at the photo later that night. 4 people who used to be a family, standing close but not touching, smiling for the camera. You could see the fracture lines if you knew where to look. But you could also see 2 little girls who were loved, who were safe, who were going to be fine. That had to be enough. People ask me sometimes if I regret how I handled it. If I should have tried counseling, given Jessica a second chance, thought about the girls before blowing everything up. I don't regret it. Jessica didn't make a mistake. She made a series of calculated choices over months. She lied, she planned, she enabled theft from our business. She chose her affair over our family every single day for 5 months. I chose my daughters. I chose honesty over comfortable lies. I chose to protect what I'd built, rather than watch it be stolen piece by piece. Could I have been less aggressive? Probably. Could I have handled the divorce with more grace? Maybe. But I'd learned something important. When someone shows you who they really are, believe them. Don't make excuses. Don't rationalize. Don't hope they'll change. Believe them, and act accordingly. Kyle ended up pleading guilty to embezzlement. He got 3 years probation, 500 hours of community service, and full restitution. His marriage ended. His reputation in the Phoenix business community was destroyed. Last I heard, he'd moved to Colorado and was working in his father's HVAC company. Jessica rebuilt her life too. She dated someone for a while, not Kyle. They'd imploded within weeks of everything coming out. She got promoted at the hospital. She showed up for the girls consistently, reliably. We'd never be friends, but we managed to be functional co-parents. And me? I kept building. The business. My relationship with my daughters. A life that was mine, not borrowed, or shared, or compromised. Emma asked me once, late at night when I was tucking her in, "Do you still love Mom?" I thought about how to answer that. The easy lie would have been yes. The bitter truth would have been no. "I love who she was," I said finally. "And I love that she gave me you and your sister. But people change. Sometimes they change into someone you can't love anymore." Emma considered this with the gravity only a 10-year-old can muster. That's sad. It is, I agreed. But it's also okay. Sometimes sad things are also the right things. She fell asleep thinking about that, and I sat in her room for a while, watching her breathe. There's no moral to this story that doesn't sound like a greeting card. Trust is fragile. Betrayal is complicated. People are capable of astonishing selfishness and surprising resilience. What I learned is simpler. You can't control what other people do. You can only control how you respond. And when everything falls apart, when the life you built reveals itself to be built on sand, you have a choice. You can collapse with it, or you can start building something new on bedrock. I chose bedrock. My daughters are happy. My business is thriving. I sleep at night without wondering what lies I'm being told. That's not everything I wanted, but it's enough. And some days, enough is actually pretty good.